Hulk Hogan's final day wasn't spent in the ring, but it was still a battle.
No, I've had like 25 surgeries in the last 10 years.
That's it.
Yeah, 10 back surgeries.
Behind the cameras and iconic mustache was a man drowning in pain, and in those final 24 hours, everything came crashing down. From tearful confessions
Oh my gosh, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I'm a nice guy.
to one final phone call, this is how it all ended. Hulk Hogan's final moments. The morning of July 24th, 2025, started like any other day in Clearwater, Florida. The sun was rising over the pristine beaches, casting its golden glow across the water where Terry Gene Bollea, the man the world knew as Hulk Hogan, had made his home. But this wasn't going to be just another day, brother. This was going to be the day that would forever change the landscape of professional wrestling and leave millions of Hulkamaniacs around the globe reaching for their tissues instead of their yellow and red bandanas. At approximately 9:51 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, emergency dispatch operators in Clearwater received a call that would send shockwaves through the sports entertainment universe. The dispatch audio, which was later obtained and released by TMZ, captures the urgent yet controlled chaos of that fateful morning. The operator's voice crackles through the radio waves. Fire Tower Bravo, Rescue 46, LR 45, Engine 46, cardiac arrest. Those words, spoken with professional efficiency, carried the weight of a moment that wrestling fans worldwide never wanted to hear. The brief censoring bleep in the audio, likely protecting Hogan's privacy in his most vulnerable moment, only added to the haunting nature of these final communications. Within minutes of that initial call, multiple units from Clearwater Fire and Rescue were mobilized, arriving within 5 minutes of the dispatch. The scene that greeted them was one that would be seared into their memories forever. A slew of police cars and EMTs gathered outside the $11.5 million estate, their emergency lights painting the morning in reds and blues that seemed almost prophetic given Hogan's signature color scheme. Paramedics found the 71-year-old wrestling legend unresponsive, and what followed was a scene that would make even the most hardened emergency responder's heart skip a beat. The leaked video footage, captured by a neighbor and later shared across social media platforms, shows paramedics working with the kind of desperate intensity usually reserved for the most critical situations. CPR was performed for approximately 30 minutes at the home, with audio logs noting that resuscitation efforts were in progress at 10:28 a.m. The visual of seeing the Hulkster, the man who had body-slammed Andre the Giant in front of 93,000 screaming fans at the Pontiac Silverdome, lying motionless on a stretcher while paramedics performed chest compressions, was a sight that wrestling fans never imagined they'd witness. At approximately 10:30 a.m., Hogan was transported via Sunstar ambulance to Morton Plant Hospital in Clearwater, with CPR continuing during the journey. The EMTs never gave up hope, maintaining their life-saving efforts throughout the transport, knowing that somewhere in that body was the fighting spirit that had overcome countless challenges throughout a legendary career. But despite their valiant efforts, their expertise, and their unwavering determination, Hogan was pronounced dead at 11:17 a.m. at Morton Plant Hospital. His family stated he was surrounded by his loved ones at the time of his passing, a small comfort in an otherwise devastating moment. The official cause was listed as cardiac arrest, though the underlying factors that contributed to this tragic outcome would become a subject of intense speculation and investigation in the days that followed. But to truly understand the magnitude of this loss, we need to rewind the clock and examine the final interviews that gave us our last glimpses into the mind and heart of the man behind the legendary persona. These conversations, conducted in the weeks and days leading up to his passing, provide haunting insights into a man who was simultaneously looking backward at his incredible legacy while also trying to forge a new path forward. In May 2025, just weeks before his death, Hogan appeared on Fox and Friends for what would turn out to be his final live television interview. This appearance was conducted while he was in New York City, promoting his co-founded wrestling promotion, Real American Freestyle. The irony wasn't lost on wrestling observers that the man who had conquered Madison Square Garden countless times was making his final TV appearance just miles from where he had achieved some of his greatest triumphs. During this interview, Hogan displayed the kind of infectious energy that had made him a household name for over 4 decades. Despite having undergone recent neck surgery and dealing with reports of leg numbness, the Hulkster was in full promotional mode, hyping his new wrestling venture with the kind of passion that reminded longtime fans why they had fallen in love with him in the first place. He claimed, "It's gonna be crazy, brother. I'm in New York City. I got all lit up last night." Those words, delivered with classic Hogan enthusiasm, would prove to be among his final public statements on live television. Fox Nation confirmed the inaugural events would proceed on August 30th, 2025, even after his passing, a testament testament to the vision he had for bringing fresh talent and authentic athleticism back to professional wrestling. But perhaps even more revealing was his street interview with comedian and journalist Adam Glynn, which was conducted shortly before his death and has been widely cited as one of his absolute final interviews. This casual, unscripted conversation provided a window into Hogan's soul that was both enlightening and, in retrospect, deeply poignant. In this interview, conducted in what appears to be a relaxed street-side setting, Hogan opened up about aspects of his career and personal life that he had rarely discussed with such candor. He confessed to keeping beer in the dressing room for the wrestlers, calling it a treat that improved performances.
Well, the truth is, truth be told, before I wrestled, I always kept a case of beer in the dressing room, because the boys never had that treat. But when I was around, I had that little bit of stroke back then. I'd keep a case of beer and the boys would hit it before we go to the ring. Made the matches much better.
This revelation provided fascinating insight into the behind-the-scenes culture of wrestling during Hogan's heyday, painting a picture of a locker room leader who genuinely cared about the morale and well-being of his fellow performers. But it was his discussion of the annual John Matuzak Memorial Workout that really showcased the depth of his character and the bonds he formed with people from all walks of life.
And that was called the John Matuzak Memorial Workout. And John Matuzak played for the Oakland Raiders. He played for the University of Tampa. He's a very good friend of mine. And when he passed away, his mom sent all this stuff to me, his clothes, pictures, everything. So every year, we'd have the John Matuzak Memorial Workout, and we'd start training at midnight. We'd train till the sun came up, and we'd train every single body part. And we drank beer the whole time.
The emotion in Hogan's voice when discussing his departed friend was unmistakable, revealing a man who valued genuine human connections above all the glitz and glamour of his celebrity status. This wasn't the cartoonish character dropping leg drops and telling kids to eat their vitamins. This was Terry Bollea sharing memories of a friendship that transcended the world of sports entertainment. When the conversation turned to current WWE talent, Hogan's analysis demonstrated that his eye for talent and understanding of the business remained as sharp as ever, even in his twilight years. His assessment of the competitive landscape showed a veteran's appreciation for the pressures facing modern performers.
It's going to be the survival of the quickest draw, because once you get on that level, everybody's gunning for you. I don't care what the storyline is. You got to make your own breaks when you get to that level. You got to outthink the office, you got to outthink the business, you got to outthink the company. And once you get on that level, you've got to make your own breaks.
These words proved prophetic in their own way, as they illustrated Hogan's deep understanding of what it takes to survive at the highest levels of any competitive field. The fact that he was still thinking strategically about the business and offering wisdom to the next generation showed that his passion for wrestling never dimmed, even as his body was failing him. But perhaps most telling was the subtle way Hogan reflected on the toll that wrestling had taken on so many of his contemporaries and friends. His comment that survival in wrestling was about being the quickest draw carried an undertone of understanding about the physical and mental challenges that had claimed so many of his peers. The fact that he was having these conversations just days before his own passing adds a layer of poignancy that no wrestling fan could have anticipated. The video of this final interview, posted on July 25, 2025, just one day after his death, quickly garnered over 148,000 views, with fans desperately seeking any final glimpse of their hero. The description noted post-interview chats where Hogan expressed love for his family and fans, suggesting that even in his final days, the Hulkster was thinking about the people who had supported him throughout his incredible journey. But as we would soon discover, the man who had entertained millions was harboring secrets and carrying burdens that would reshape how the world viewed the legend of Hulk Hogan, setting the stage for revelations that would shock even his most devoted fans. The controversies that defined a complex legacy. While the wrestling world mourned the loss of their beloved icon, the conversation surrounding Hulk Hogan's passing inevitably turned to the complex tapestry of controversies that had defined his later years, creating a legacy that was as complicated as it was influential. These weren't just minor scandals or tabloid fodder. These were earth-shattering revelations that had fundamentally altered how fans, peers, and the industry itself viewed the man who had once been the undisputed face of sports entertainment. The most devastating blow to Hogan's public image came in July 2015 when a leaked audio transcript from a 2007 sex tape surfaced, revealing him using racial slurs, including the N-word, during a private conversation about his daughter Brooke's dating life. The impact was immediate and brutal, like a steel chair shot to the back of the head that left the wrestling world reeling and forever changed how millions of fans would remember their childhood hero. On July 24, 2015, WWE terminated Hogan's contract and removed him from their website and Hall of Fame, stating with corporate precision, WWE is committed to embracing and celebrating individuals from all backgrounds as demonstrated by the diversity of our employees, performers, and fans worldwide. Those words hit harder than any finishing move Hogan had ever taken, effectively erasing decades of contributions to the company that had made him a global superstar. The leaked audio wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment, it revealed a pattern of thinking that contradicted everything Hogan had publicly represented throughout his career. Additional recordings surfaced, including jailhouse phone calls from 2008 between Hogan and his son Nick, where he used the N-word again when referring to Nick's black cellmates. These weren't isolated incidents, but a troubling glimpse into private conversations that revealed a side of Terry Bollea that stood in stark contrast to the values Hulk Hogan supposedly championed. When Hogan finally addressed the scandal publicly, his response felt as scripted as any wrestling promo, but without the same conviction that had made his character work so effectively for decades. In a statement to People on July 24, 2015, he said, "8 years ago, I used offensive language during a conversation. It was unacceptable for me to have used that offensive language. There's no excuse for it, and I apologize for having done it. But the damage was already done, and the wrestling community found itself grappling with how to reconcile their memories of a beloved figure with this harsh new reality." Some African-American wrestlers, such as Booker T and Mark Henry, eventually accepted Hogan's apology, with Booker T demonstrating the kind of grace and forgiveness that elevated him above the controversy itself. However, others in the wrestling community were less forgiving, reflecting a divide that would persist throughout the remainder of Hogan's life. The racist comments didn't exist in a vacuum. They were part of a sex tape scandal that had already rocked Hogan's world and fundamentally changed the landscape of online media. In October 2012, Gawker Media published a 1-minute 41-second clip of a 2007 sex tape featuring Hogan and Heather Clem, the then wife of his friend, radio personality Bubba the Love Sponge Clem. The tape had been secretly recorded without Hogan's knowledge or consent, representing a violation of privacy that would ultimately lead to one of the most significant legal battles in media history. Hogan filed a lawsuit against Gawker in 2013, seeking $100 million for invasion of privacy, infringement of personality rights, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The legal proceedings that followed would expose not just the intimate details of Hogan's private life, but also the ethical boundaries of digital journalism and the power of billionaire-backed litigation to reshape the media landscape. The trial itself became a media circus, with Hogan testifying that the tape's release left him mortified and emphasizing the distinction between his private self, Terry Bollea, and his public persona, Hulk Hogan. This distinction, which had been a cornerstone of his career, suddenly became a legal strategy, as Hogan's legal team argued that Terry Bollea deserved privacy rights that his wrestling character couldn't claim. The jury ultimately awarded Hogan $115 million in compensatory damages and $25 million in punitive damages, totaling $140 million. The verdict was later settled for $31 million, but the damage to Gawker was irreversible, ultimately leading to the media company's bankruptcy and sale. The case was financially backed by billionaire Peter Thiel, who had his own grudge against Gawker for previously outing him as gay, turning Hogan's personal violation into a proxy war about the limits of press freedom. While many fans sympathized with Hogan's privacy violation, the scandal further damaged his public image, particularly as it overlapped with the racism controversy that emerged from the same recordings. The fact that his most shameful moments and his greatest legal victory were inextricably linked created a complex narrative that even his most skilled publicists couldn't untangle. Hogan's personal life provided another source of ongoing controversy, particularly his tumultuous relationships and the very public dissolution of his family. His marriage to Linda Claridge lasted 26 years before ending in a highly contentious divorce in 2009, with Linda alleging infidelity and emotional abuse that painted a very different picture of the man who had presented himself as a family-friendly role model. Linda accused Hogan of cheating multiple times, specifically alleging an affair with Christiane Plant, a close friend of Brooks who also worked with her. The irony that Hogan's alleged infidelity involved someone close to his daughter added an extra layer of betrayal that resonated with fans who had watched their family dynamic play out on reality television. The divorce settlement reflected the bitter nature of their split, with Linda receiving over 70% of the couple's liquid assets, totaling $7.44 million out of $10.41 million, plus 40% ownership in Hulk's various companies. These weren't just numbers on a balance sheet, they represented the financial dismantling of what had once appeared to be the perfect wrestling family. But perhaps most heartbreaking was the estrangement that developed between Hogan and his daughter Brooke, a relationship that had been one of the most endearing aspects of his public persona. By 2025, Brooke had been estranged from both parents for approximately 8 years, with the rift traced back to the racism scandal and what Brooke described as a pattern of abuse that had gone on throughout her childhood. The estrangement was made even more painful by Brooke's complete absence from major family events, including her notable absence from Hogan's 2023 wedding to Sky Daily. Brooke also changed her last name to Olexi after her marriage, signaling a desire to separate from the Hogan family identity that had once been a source of pride and prosperity. In his later years, Hogan's political affiliations became another source of controversy, particularly his vocal support for Donald Trump. At the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, he delivered a theatrical speech, ripping off his shirt to reveal a Trump Vance tank top, proclaiming, "Let Trumpomania run wild, brother."
Enough was enough! And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother!
For some fans, this political stance was a natural extension of his real American persona. For others, it represented yet another disappointing turn from someone they had once admired. Hogan's friendship with Trump dated back decades, beginning in the 1980s when Trump hosted WrestleMania 4 and V at his Atlantic City casinos. But his increasingly vocal political support, particularly after citing the assassination attempt on Trump in July 2024 as a motivator for his endorsement, alienated fans across the political spectrum who preferred to keep their wrestling separate from their politics. The complexity of these controversies was that they didn't exist in isolation. They were interconnected threads in a tapestry that revealed a man struggling with the gap between his public persona and his private reality. Linda Hogan's 2025 accusation that he was a sex addict and a liar added another layer to this complicated portrait, though she also acknowledged that he had been a good father, despite their marital problems. This complicated legacy would become even more poignant when viewed against the backdrop of Hogan's incredible journey from a small-town dreamer to a global icon, a story that deserved to be told in full despite its imperfections. From childhood dreams to eternal legacy. Born on August 11, 1953 in Augusta, Georgia, Terry Bollea moved to Tampa, Florida as a young child, where he would develop the values, work ethic, and determination that would eventually propel him to superstardom. During his high school years at Robinson High School, Hogan described himself as a very fat kid that was afraid to take his shirt off, who really never had a girlfriend until like my senior year.
Oh my gosh, a very fat kid that was afraid to take his shirt off. And even because I lived in Clearwater, Florida, went to school, Robinson High School, University of South Florida, I wouldn't take my shirt off when we go to the beach. And, so I kind of it was weird. So that's why I started working out and training. Kind of, yeah. Okay. But I was playing music. I was playing in a rock and roll band. And I kind of what we call heat. I had heat with all the athletes.
Growing up in what he called the SOG, south of Gandy area of Tampa, young Terry was acutely aware of the limited opportunities available to kids from his background. As he later explained, if you're south of Gandy, your career options were construction, drug dealer, or athlete. Rather than accept these limitations, he chose a different path entirely, pursuing music as his ticket to a better life. Hogan initially pursued baseball, attracting major league scouts, but an injury at 16 ended those prospects. This setback could have derailed a lesser person's dreams, but Terry's response was to double down on his musical ambitions. He played bass guitar in the band Ruckus, which gained local popularity in Tampa Bay, and the experience of performing in front of crowds would prove invaluable preparation for his later career in wrestling. Playing music at the Islands Club at Davis Island from the age of 17, Terry was already demonstrating the work ethic that would define his entire career. His transition into wrestling began in 1977 when he started training under Hiro Matsuda, who famously broke his leg on the first day to test his resolve. This wasn't just a hazing ritual, it was a brutal introduction to a business that demanded both physical toughness and mental resilience. The fact that Hogan returned after this traumatic experience demonstrated the kind of determination that would eventually separate him from countless other aspiring wrestlers. He wrestled under various names like Terry Boulder and Sterling Golden before adopting Hulk Hogan after a 1978 TV appearance where he outshone Lou Ferrigno, star of the incredible Hulk Dot. But it was his partnership with Vince McMahon Jr. that would truly change the trajectory of both wrestling and entertainment history. When Hogan signed with the World Wrestling Federation in December 1983, he brought with him a vision of wrestling that went far beyond traditional territorial boundaries. His all-American persona, complete with red and yellow attire, bandanas, and a horseshoe mustache, tapped into something primal in the American psyche, creating a character that transcended wrestling and became a genuine cultural phenomenon. The birth of Hulkamania wasn't just just about wrestling. It was about hope, determination, and the belief that good could triumph over evil. His 4 commandments, training, saying prayers, eating vitamins, and believing in oneself, provided a positive message that resonated with fans, particularly children, who saw in Hogan a role model who stood for everything they had been taught to value. Hogan's success helped transform wrestling from a regional attraction into a mainstream entertainment juggernaut, with his appearances on MTV, Saturday Night Live, and alongside celebrities like Cyndi Lauper, broadening wrestling's appeal to unprecedented levels. His match against Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 in 1987, which drew a record 93,173 fans to the Pontiac Silverdome, represented more than just a wrestling match. It was a cultural moment that demonstrated the power of sports entertainment to capture the imagination of an entire generation. Hogan's 5 WWF championships and 6 WCW World Heavyweight Championships made him a 12-time world champion, but numbers alone couldn't capture the scope of his influence. He headlined 8 of the first 9 WrestleMania events, with his first WWF championship reign being the second longest in the title's history. These weren't just wrestling accomplishments. They were milestones in the evolution of American entertainment. His transition to Hollywood further demonstrated his crossover appeal, with roles in films like Rocky III, 1982, where he played Thunderlips, introducing him to audiences who might never have watched wrestling. His starring roles in No Holds Barred, 1989, and Suburban Commando, 1991, proved that his charisma could translate beyond the squared circle, even if the films themselves weren't critical darlings. The reality TV era brought Hogan into living rooms around the world through Hogan Knows Best, 2005 to 2007, which focused on his family life with wife Linda and children Brooke and Nick. But perhaps most importantly, Hogan's legacy lies in how he fundamentally changed the business model of professional wrestling. His success with merchandise, music, and cross-promotional opportunities created a template that every major wrestling star since has followed. He didn't just perform in wrestling, he transformed it into a global entertainment empire that continues to generate billions of dollars in revenue decades after his prime. His renewed commitment to Christianity became a defining aspect of his later years. On December 20th, 2023, Hogan and his wife Sky Daly were baptized at Indian Rocks Baptist Church in Largo, Florida. Hogan credited his faith with helping him overcome addictions to painkillers and alcohol, which had stemmed from over 25 surgeries due to wrestling injuries.
I just get tired of crashing and burning. I get tired of making mistakes and getting up and moving forward. I get tired of getting so many scars on me. And, I got to a point in my life before I met Sky, before I had the baptism, where I'd had enough. I was sick and tired of myself.
His charitable work, which spanned decades, provided another avenue for positive impact. He was named the most requested celebrity of the 1980s for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, granting wishes for children with life-threatening illnesses. He supported numerous organizations, including the American Diabetes Association, the Special Olympics, and co-founded the Dream Seekers Foundation to provide educational resources for Native American children. His 2018 induction into the Boys and Girls Clubs of America Alumni Hall of Fame recognized his lifelong involvement, stemming from his own experiences as a youth member. Even in his business ventures, Hogan continued to think about bringing people together rather than dividing them. His Real American Beer brand was launched with the message of unity. Let's bring America back together, one beer at a time. This is the beer for all real Americans because we're all real Americans. While some critics viewed this as an attempt to capitalize on political divisions, Hogan's stated goal was actually the opposite: to find common ground in an increasingly polarized society. His Real American Freestyle Wrestling promotion, launched shortly before his death, represented his vision for bringing fresh talent and authentic athleticism back to professional wrestling. Even at 71 years old, dealing with serious health issues, Hogan was still trying to innovate and improve the industry that had given him so much. The health struggles that ultimately claimed his life were themselves a testament to the physical sacrifices he had made for the entertainment of others. His over 25 surgeries in the last decade of his life, including 10 back surgeries, knee and hip replacements, and facial operations, represented the accumulated toll of nearly 4 decades of pushing his body to its limits for the sake of his craft. In one of his final candid moments about his physical condition,
I think my body pretty much shut down on me, and I ended up having like 25 surgeries in the last 10 years. Like I said,
this statement, delivered with his characteristic humor but tinged with real pain, encapsulated the irony of a man who had spent his career making the impossible look easy, only to pay a tremendous physical price for that illusion. The tributes that poured in after his death reflected the complexity of his legacy. President Donald Trump called him MAGA all the way, strong, tough, smart, but with the biggest heart, while Sylvester Stallone remembered this brilliant personality and showman when he was 26 years old. WWE issued a statement calling him one of pop culture's most recognizable figures who helped WWE achieve global recognition in the 1980s. But perhaps the most telling tribute came from fellow wrestling legend Ric Flair, who captured the personal side of their friendship. "Hulk has been by my side since we started in the wrestling business. He was always there for me even when I didn't ask for him to be. He was one of the first to visit me when I was in the hospital with a 2% chance of living, and he prayed by my bedside." This wasn't just professional respect. It was genuine love between two men who had shared the unique experience of being at the very top of their profession. The fact that his final WWE appearance on January 6, 2025, was met with boos from the crowd demonstrated that the controversies continued to follow him right up until his death. In the end, perhaps that's the most honest way to remember Hulk Hogan. Not as a perfect hero or an irredeemable villain, but as a complex, flawed, and ultimately human figure whose life encompassed both the very best and some of the worst aspects of the American dream. That's a wrap, guys. To enjoy more of such clips, be sure to click on the card showing on the screen.